Check, check. 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's go! Welcome to the podcast, installment 123. Ballsy here with you. Thanks for consuming this podcast. I do appreciate it. We love talking local sports, in particular the three-down game of football. Former NFL quarterback P.J. Walker made his much-anticipated CFL debut on Monday. And he was okay. 8 of 16 for 77 yards was the 30-year-old quarterbacking the Calgary Stampeders, helping them to a 26-16 victory over the BC Lions in Victoria. He gave way in the second half to third-year passer Logan Bonner and rookie Josh Love. Another thing of note, or two other things of note, the BC Lions took a lot of penalties, like 187 yards in penalties. I'm sure new coach Buck Pierce won't be happy about that. And Jackson Finley, the much ballyhooed safety, whose dad Anthony played briefly in the CFL, whose uncle Brooks played for the Lions and the Saskatchewan Roughriders, was a broadcast partner of mine. His grandpa and his great-grandpa played in the CFL as well. He did well in the secondary for the BC Lions, so good on him. Nick Mardner, receiver who was a top pick, second overall 2024 draft with the CFL's Ottawa Redblacks, undergoing knee surgery. He's out for the 2025 season. Last year, the Mississauga, Ontario native played in all 18 games, made 26 catches for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns. Speedy recovery for him. The CFL and its Players Association having discussions about allowing CFL players to take part of the 2028 Summer Olympics in LA. And apparently, according to CFL PA President Solomon Elamimian, they'd have to tweak the collective bargaining agreement, but they are in favor of exposing CFL players to the Olympics in Los Angeles. The first time flag football would be played at the Olympics, and it happens right in the heart of CFL season, July 14th through the 30th. NFL owners are going to vote on that very soon. Riders having some offensive line woe issues once again. Sean McEwen, a much ballyhooed offseason signing at center, is out for quite a while. That's all they'll say, with a lower body injury. Not sure what it is, but he's walking around practice on crutches. That would tell you it's a knee or some sort of foot injury, maybe an Achilles, although we don't know. And then Philippe Gagnon, offensive lineman that came over from the Montreal Alouettes, was taking snaps with Zach Fry in place of McEwen, who went down with the aforementioned injury, and also at the guard spot. He walked off the practice field on Monday with the trainer and did not return. So stay tuned there. Maybe by the time this airs, we'll already know what happened with Gagnon, but the Rough Riders having issues once again injury-wise on the offensive line. Talking about rule changes in the CFL. The most significant change will add protection for defenseless receivers. A 15-yard penalty and an automatic first down will now be called when a hit is delivered at or below the knees of a player who is in act of catching a pass while in a vulnerable position. This protection does not exist if the receiver leaves his feet and jumps while catching a pass. Okay, let's further water down and make it harder. Make it more subjective for the ref to decide. Like, come on, man. The league has also expanded the criteria for grade 2 roughing the passer, which is accompanied by a 25-yard penalty. Blows delivered with the crown of the helmet to the head or neck of a passer and hits delivered to the knee or below the knee of the passer will now qualify for an increased penalty so long as the defender has a clear view of the contact and the defender isn't like pushed in or knocked off balance, okay? No mitigating circumstances. The penalty can also be called if the hit is really late. And I get that, and you need to protect players. I'm all for protecting players. I want to see our best players continue to play week after week. As a fan, as a broadcaster, I've got a kid who's trying to crack a roster, so obviously I have a vested interest, all right? But it's funny how it's always against the defense. So you can't hit a receiver low, and you can't hit a receiver high. So how do you hit a ball carrier? Okay, and I get that. You don't want to roll into a quarterback's knee. They're looking downfield. They're not really looking at their feet, and they are the most instrumental and important player on offense. Let's just be honest. I think every player is valuable in the game, but the quarterback's the most important position. That's without argument. I get that. But, like, why is a offensive player allowed to stiff arm a blow to the head of a defender trying to make a tackle? Why isn't that outlawed? So defenders don't matter? Or the offensive guy can lower his helmet to, drop his shoulder and drop his head into the defender's head, penalty free. Rarely, if ever, do you see that called. The other one that's a joke is the receivers waggling to the line of scrimmage. They also called it the Ray Elgard rule. Like, in a lot of cases, these receivers are offside. Like, they're a step or two over the line at the snap of the ball. Trust me, okay? Go back and watch a lot of the games. But they're not even supposed to be at the line of scrimmage. Now, technically, you're allowed to have 12 or 11 people at the line of scrimmage. You could actually have 12, have the lineman, the center, snap the ball back through his legs, roll it on the ground. A guy could go off the line of scrimmage, pick it up, and run. He could do that. But technically, if you had 11 guys at the line of scrimmage, the guys inside the ends, so the guys inside the furthest guy on the line of scrimmage are all ineligible. So what that means is this: in a traditional setting, you have your lineman, and then you have your two ends, your X and your Z receiver, your wide receivers. And then you have your slot backs motioning to the line of scrimmage. Could be two to one side, one to the other side, and two wide out receivers, two wide receivers. Well, technically, you're only allowed 7 at the snap of the ball. That's what I mean about 7. Because you're not allowed to have those two inside guys at the line of scrimmage at the snap of the ball. They should technically be ineligible. So a lot of times these guys, I can guarantee you about 10 out of 10 times they're at the line of scrimmage at the snap of the ball. But in a lot of cases, they're over the line of scrimmage at the snap of the ball. So defenders have to take the stiff arm in the face. They have to take the blow by the offensive guy with the crown of his helmet to your crown of your helmet as a defender, but you can't do it the other way. You can't hit a guy in the face. You can't blow a guy in the face, a blow to the face. You can't do that or you get a penalty. Shot to the head, 15-yard penalty. And now they can get a running start, be offside. You got to cover them, and then you can't touch them. Like, who'd want to play defense? Who would want to play defense in the CFL? I can tell you one, my kid. And the other thing I want to say is this. I've been covering this league for a long time. Watching it as a fan and then covering it for a long time. Up close on the sidelines, at practice every day, as the voice of a CFL team. And then when you get and I knew it was grueling before, but when you become a football dad and you see your kid trying to make it, this is not on the level of importance as a Navy SEAL. I get that. But it is probably, besides trying to be a Navy SEAL or the equivalent in Canada, this is the most grueling job interview you'll ever go through. No days off. You're at the facility at 6:37. You don't get home after meetings till 8. So not only physically, but mentally taxing. Groins and elbows and shoulders and knees and treatment and jammed fingers and all that stuff. Tip of the cap to those guys trying to make a professional football team. For sure in the Canadian Football League where they're not getting rich. Are they poor? No. They're playing. If you make the roster and play all 18 games, you make 72,000, 72.5 or whatever it is. That's not chump change for 6 months for a young guy, but you're not making 700, 800,000, $1 million. So kudos to these guys for putting their bodies on the line. They have all my respect. Don't care what team they're playing for, okay? We got a great show lined up today. We are going to hear from Kyle McIntyre, Commissioner of the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League. The Melfort Mustangs got to the final, the national final, and lost to the host Calgary Canucks 7-2. They played like 5 games in 6 days. We'll talk to him about that. We're also going to have another installment of Kickin It with Jon Ryan. Jon just bought a soccer team in Portland, so we'll talk to him about that and about some training camp stories and just the grueling thing that is training camp. And we're also going to hear from Keith Willoughby. Keith Willoughby, the Dean at the Edwards School of Business, but he's also our Dean here on Ballsy Uncut for our CFL simulations. We'll get his take on what's happening with the Riders in the offseason, maybe the injury woes early on in camp, the great quarterbacking they've got with Harris and Jake Mayer, and even that Cone kid from North Dakota, or from Notre Dame, and Tommy Stevens coming over. Third down Tommy coming over from Calgary. That and much, much more. This is Ballsy Uncut. And by the way, you're going to see the sponsors roll here. Thanks to them for getting on board. Okay, I'll get to your hat in a second here, JR. But, just as we start rolling tape here, I found out that George Wendt dies. Norm from Cheers.
Oh.
Yeah, where everybody knows your name. Hey, Norm, you got room for a beer? No, but I'm willing to add on. You know, there's always those lines.
Yeah, he had so many cold openings in that show where, you know, just, you'd walk in and just like, they were terrific. That's sad to hear.
Hey, Normie, how's life in the fast lane? Don't know. Can't find the on-ramp. Can you pour me a beer? But, like, okay, so for me, he was one of my favorite television characters. He obviously, you liked him. Can you, off the top of your head, who's your favorite TV character besides your wife? Your wife
Dawson Leary. Dawson Leary from Dawson's Creek.
There you go.
I was in the 90s and early 2000s. I was so into all those poppy high school shows.
Okay,
I'm not embarrassed to say it. I was, you know, Dawson's Creek and the OC.
Yeah,
all those ones.
I was Don Johnson on Miami Vice, I was Nash Bridges. So that was me. That was my favorite TV characters. There's so many though.
I mean, you can look at the whole cast of Seinfeld and have an argument for almost every single one of them as being an all-time great. You know, same with Friends too. If you're into that, so Friends is a big one too.
You and your wife, I know you do your book club thing, but are you guys streaming anything? Anything right now you're watching on TV? Like
she watches The Handmaid's Tale right now is what she's watching. We got to stay up late on Monday nights for it to come out to the latest episode, but. Pretty much everything on Netflix. I'm almost ashamed to say how much TV I watch, but any kind of new kind of streaming show comes out, especially like a limited series or something like that, we're all over it.
Just finished.
And then, honestly, also reality TV. You know, I really hate to admit it, but I'm an absolute sucker for reality TV.
I watched the Reacher. I watched that one, and then just the on Netflix. It's called The Four Seasons with Tina Fey and stuff. It's actually a pretty good.
I watched the first 5 or 6 episodes. Haven't gotten through it yet, but it's pretty good. It was unexpectedly good, but just a great cast on that.
Steve Carell. There's a whole bunch of good ones on there. So yeah, I watched the first. There's going to be a second season too, and a little twist at the end. So make sure you check that out.
Someone ruined the end for me. I was like 2 episodes away, and someone ruined the end for me.
I would never do that. I can't.
I know you wouldn't.
I can't do that. Okay, speaking of reality TV, there's no better reality TV than professional sports or any sports. Watching it, it's live. It's unscripted. That's why I love sports. I know you were a kicker, but you're an in-shape kicker. But you were still a kicker. But you saw the my son's going through this, and I said, Ethan, I don't want to put this on the same level as a Navy SEAL, but outside of Navy SEALs, this would probably be the most grueling job interview ever. Would you agree with that?
100%. You know, you take the military out of the picture. It's going through a training camp, especially your first training camp, is not only like a physical grind, but it's a mental grind too. You're constantly counting numbers. You go into a situation where you have to be at the top of your game, but people don't even realize all the other things that go along with it. Learning the playbook, learning 100 people's names that you've never met before, and then trying to win their trust over. You know, every little thing is it's mentally straining. You know, from where you have to park, where you sit in a meeting room, where you are in line to eat food. There's a pecking order and everything in pro football. So those are the other things you have to learn learning how to be a professional football player as well. So it's absolutely grueling. You know, I went through 19 pro football training camps, but I still have the most memories of my very first one. You know, that's why, you know, Ethan's going to remember this one no matter how long he plays, because you just go through so much in that first training camp.
Yeah, and, you know, it's interesting. You've been in so many. Do you know right away when you get there? Like, I know it's weird training camp and preseason. You wear the same jersey, but you're not on the same team because you're all trying to make the job. But as a guy that comes in, do you kind of know, hey, this team has the makings of something here? Like even that early, like I like where we're going, the direction, the leadership. Because I'll tell you this, Ethan walks into the Blue Bombers facility And like Zach Collaros talks to him, Strevler talks to him, Willie Jefferson talks to him, Hallett, Cramdy, like all the guys. And he's like, Sergio Castillo, I know you helped that, you helped facilitate that. But like, he's like, I'm a nobody, Dad. And these guys are bugging me about my Oilers hat and all this stuff. Like that, to me, that just tells you, now I know why this team's been to 5 straight Grey Cups.
100%. You know, that's what makes teams special. And, you know, I didn't really have that feeling until around 2013 after I think we'd won 12 games in 2012, almost went to the NFC Championship game, and didn't feel like we were starting over. It was just a continuation. And I remember right around that time, Jorgen Hughes, long snapper for the Rough Riders, longtime long snapper for the Rough Riders. He was with us for a little bit in training camp, and as you said, he felt like a nobody. And he walked in. He goes, the very first guy that came up and talked to was Cam Chancellor, one of the best football players in the world, just coming up to me, who I'm nothing, and he welcomes me to the team instantly. And that's how that team was. There's always a pecking order, but it's not so severe where, you know, I remember back in the day, you walk into a room as a rookie and just be treated like a piece of crap. You know what I mean? Like, it was just like you have to earn your wings just to be able to talk. And, you know, we have teams that are a little more accepting, like sounds like the Winnipeg Blue Bombers are now. It shows on the field.
Yeah, so you're talking about numbers, and I'm not going to get into it too much here because I don't reveal what happens behind closed doors. But my son did suffer. He's having a great camp by all accounts. I haven't been there to watch him. And in typical ball luck fashion, I had bought tickets to go watch the game this weekend in Winnipeg.
Winnipeg, right?
Which I'm still going. Yeah, I'm still going to go. But my son has suffered an injury, and he doesn't know the extent yet. And it's a cruel way of sports, man. You go from doing well to having like Stanley, Brian, and some of these guys coming up to you saying, hey, I hear you're doing real well. Great job. Keep it going. To all of a sudden you get an injury and that could be the end of it for this season. I don't know where it stands right now as we talk, but that's what I'm saying. We don't give these guys, listen, I've covered this sport a long time. I've covered you. I've always respected athletes, but until you're a dad on the other side and see what they go through, like they don't get enough respect. There's no doubt about it.
They really don't, you know, and it's the things that people don't see. You know, the people see the 3 hours on Sunday afternoon or Saturday night in the CFL or whatever. They don't see the years and years leading up to that, the heart and the soul and the blood and the tears that was put in during the week, during your lifetime. Those things aren't really seen, you know, and it just so much goes into it. And, you know, my heart goes out to Ethan right now with that injury. And I've seen so many injuries for the guys, you know, just in the snap of fingers, your career's over or your season's over. Or your dream's over, you know. It's you put so much work into it, so it's just sad to see that kind of stuff. There's a lot of things that, you know, they probably don't get enough respect for, as you said, and the fans don't see a lot of that.
And just to be clear, it's not like it's a career ender or anything like that, but it's a thing where, like he was saying, Dad, if I was a veteran guy already established, I wouldn't be worried. But I'm trying to cut my teeth. I'm a nobody here, even though I'm making plays, and now I can't play in the preseason. So that's kind of one of those things where there's a finality. It's a cruel world, man.
It really is. There's no place where it's better just demonstrated than professional sports, you know. So it's just, you know, I think he'll be back.
Yeah,
Ballsy,
well,
he'll be back.
I mean, I always bet on him.
He's a tough kid. He's a tough kid.
He's been running around.
I would bet against him.
He's been running around with the injury for 3 days. It's just that, you know, it's like it's not a playoff game; it's a preseason game, and that's the other thing. I've been guilty of this. I've said it's still. Game 1 of the silly season, a meaningless game. Well, it's not meaningless for guys like that or guys who come up from, like the other thing he said, Dad, I can't believe some of these dudes. They bounced from NFL team to NFL team, and now they're coming to Canada. And let's be honest, with the change in the dollar and everything, they're not playing for money up here. Like, it's crazy.
And what a lot of people don't realize, too, is when guys come from, you know, if you're in your mid to late 20s or whatever, however old you are, you're coming from the U.S. to Canada, now you're living in a second home, most likely. You probably have a place with your wife or yourself, your apartment back home or a house back home, and now you're paying for a second home on a very limited salary. And then when you take that money back to the U.S., all of a sudden it's worth $72 on the dollar.
Yeah.
It's, you know, these guys aren't getting rich.
No. Hey, was it more, I don't think I've asked you this, I've asked other guys this, is it, like, they're both professional leagues. They both are a grind. We just outlined that. But is it more fun to play in the CFL than the NFL? The actual environment?
It is. Yeah, it definitely is. You know, obviously, I love playing in the NFL. I'm not taking anything away from that whatsoever. Yeah. But the CFL, you know, they still have this 4.5-hour rule where, you know, you're there from 8 till 12:30 every day, or from 1 to 5:30 every day, whatever your team decides, and you have the rest of the day off, really. And you're in a situation where you have 40 other guys that are from out of town. Usually, you guys are living in close proximity together, and you just have a lot of fun. Like when you're in the NFL and you're there for 12 hours, you don't go and hang out with some guys and have dinner and play video games all night. You're exhausted. You just been next to that guy for 12 hours. So camaraderie in that CFL is such a unique thing because you have so much time together. And it's, I had absolute blast for my whatever it was, 5 years in the CFL.
I think it's the Bombers. Well, it's the Bombers' belt to lose in the West because they've been there every year. But I do believe going into this season, if I was to pick on paper, well, I have already. I think the Riders are the best team on paper going in this year. I like what they did with their quarterbacking, although now they're getting a rash of injuries on the offensive line. Gagnon, the guy they brought over from Montreal, in a sling. McEwen was on crutches. He'll be out for a while. Don't know. Heard maybe speculation. Achilles, not so sure. But that could be a problem. But I think it's the Riders, Winnipeg, and then it's a coin flip after that. Edmonton, they got Trey Ford. BC, Nathan Rourke. Is he going to be the Nathan Rourke we saw in 2022 or the guy who had the NFL hangover when he came back? And VA finally gets to nail down a job in Calgary.
I mean, I think it's a completely wide open division. I think there is an argument that Winnipeg could be potentially kind of on the back nine. They're kind of on the slide a little bit. It's hard to say when they've been to so many Grey Cups. And then I think that Mace is kind of starting to build something in Saskatchewan like O'Shea did in Winnipeg, where, the players want to be there. I've talked to several players. They can't believe how fun it is to play for him, how much they respect him, how much he respects them as players. And then he go to Edmonton, Trey Ford. And, I honestly think they're going to have a bit of a two-quarterback system with Cody there as well. I think he's still got a lot left in the tank.
Yeah.
And then and then as you said, Rourke. What Rourke are we going to see? Because when I played against him in whatever that 2022, I was like, this guy can put a team on his back. Like, I mean, he can win you 13 games, 14 games without having anyone else on the field with him. And the fact that he does have guys like Justin McInnes on the field with him, I think he could have. I hope he has a big bounce back year, if you can consider that a down year, just because it was a bit of a shortened year from the NFL, his NFL camps. But we'll see.
You were the first guy that brought this up, okay? Hold on. I got to sneeze. Give me a second. Hold on. It'll be good. Okay. You were the first guy that brought this up to me, and then I kind of piggybacked it, and I've kind of ran with it, but I like your opinion on this, okay? So, Jon Ryan, a staple in our community in Regina, still gives back to Saskatchewan, helped, various fundraising, the Bob Ryan scholarship at the U of R, $200,000. You helped outfit the mini mites. You're in the community. Yes, you were 40-ish, but you were still kicking the stuffing out of the football, despite what some broadcasters would say. You were hammering.
Are you saying some or one?
One, yeah.
Some broadcaster, one broadcast. Okay.
One broadcaster. So you were hammering the stuffing out of the football, but because of the kicker rule, the global rule, you were jettisoned out of the league. Now, listen, that's not just a Rider thing. That's a CFL thing. And then you look at the draft here, John. The global draft, I think there were 11 players taken or something like that, and 8 kickers or something ridiculous like that. It definitely was a targeting of the Canadian kicker, and I think it's disgusting. Like, you probably wouldn't be kicking anymore with the Riders, but no, that's the thing. Canadian kids are getting screwed there.
The punting position has been a Canadian position for 100 years. When you look at some of these teams and you look at the guys that come from the U.S., and the turnover on these teams happens very quickly. And if you look back at kind of staples in the community and staples on teams through my childhood, through the 80s and 90s, it was always the kicker and punter. I don't recognize the left tackle anymore, but we have Dave Ridgway. I don't recognize these guys on defense, but we have Troy Westbrook and Bob Cameron who have been here for 20 years. We can always rely on them. If I want a jersey that's going to last a long time, I buy the kicker and punter because they're going to be here. And now that's not happening anymore. We have the kid. This is what I'm saying. We have the kid in Saskatchewan who's Australian. They get him for a cheaper value. They basically save a spot in the roster basically because they are using the global player at that position. He gets an opportunity to go coach in the U.S. He leaves. Other guys come here for 2 or 3 years. They don't get their NFL shot. They leave. So now we're replacing these staples in the community, guys that often stay in the community. Got Paul McCallum's, Bob Cameron's, Louis Pasaglia's. Now we're replacing those with, I don't want to use the word scabs, but guys from Australia that come in and there for a year or two. And I have nothing against these guys or their talent. Okay, I played with, when I was in CFL, I played with a few of them. We had a couple on the practice squad when I was in Edmonton. We had a couple on the practice squad. And these guys are fantastic guys. So I'm not saying anything about them. My complaint is about the rule.
Yeah.
And if we want to make this the Canadian Football League and we're taking away staples of the community, guys that are the pillars of the team, and replacing them with the guys that are using it as a stepping stone to try to get to the NFL or a coaching job in the U.S., when we take that out, for what reason are we doing that?
Yeah,
Well,
and here's
I guarantee you the viewership of CFL football did not move the needle in Australia.
No, they did it because, and albeit under the old commissioner, they did it for, they were going to be the global football league. No, you're not. The NFL is playing
you're
like
not.
you're not. The NFL's got that covered. Number one. Number two, oh, maybe we'll get some social media hits and that can turn into revenue. That didn't happen. So why did you do it, and why are you continuing to do it? Now, Stuart Johnston comes in. He's obviously just going to ride it out this year just to get the lay of the land. I hope when he starts making moves, that's one of the first moves he takes out. They did have a couple of rule changes this year. One of them hitting a receiver who's trying to make a catch at the knee or below the knee. And then a couple of more where tweaks to roughing the passer, which the quarterback's the most important position. But here's my problem. Everything is against the defense. Everything is against the defense. Here's a question for you, Batman. Riddle me this. Why can we still have a stiff arm to the head of a defender trying to make a tackle? Why is that allowed? Why can the offensive guy drop his head and hit with the crown of his helmet, but the defensive guy can't do it? He can't hit you in the face mask. He can't, so defensive health doesn't matter?
It's so interesting because it used to be a big part of the game back in the 70s. Defense lineman hitting the side of the head of a tackler or a guard. That used to be a huge play. And a running back can still do that to a defensive lineman. Like open field as hard as you can, hit him in the face. That's an interesting one. I think that we definitely have to, improve player safety, and we have. In the last 10, 15, 20 years, it has been a drastic change in player safety.
Yeah, and but at some point, John, are we not as safe? Like, it's like, well, you can go to the octagon, but you can't punch the guy in the face. But you can't do that because you might hurt him, right?
I agree with what I'm saying is that we've improved it, but now we got to dial it back a little bit. Like it's almost gone too far. How does a guy make a play on you don't realize how fast these guys are moving, and they're using the best fundamentals they have, but you guys are flying around, and sometimes stuff just happens, and he's not malicious. He's not trying to blow a guy's knee out. He just happened to get his elbow or his shoulder into the guy's knee.
Yeah, and so you can't hit them high and you can't hit them low. That's why I think a lot of CFL and NFL offensive records are rubbish. Like Jerry Rice got mugged down the field, and he was probably the greatest player that ever played. But now guys can go over the middle. They don't have to worry about getting hit. They don't have to worry about anything. And I'm not saying I don't. Listen, I got a kid playing. We just talked about that. I'm all for player safety. I have friends, Brett Lother, whatever. I want people to be healthy. But at some point, you know what you signed up for.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a clip on the internet. It was like the opening of Sunday Football on whatever network it was back in the 80s. And they have about 20 hits, and all of them are illegal now, and all of them were legal back then. Like it's just like a whole highlight film of illegal hits now that were celebrated back then. And the game has changed so much. Yeah,
absolutely. I believe that was the intro to this the NFC on CBS back in the day.
Okay, yeah,
that's and everything. Yeah. What do you make of this tush push? They're talking about it as we talk. Do you think it is a good thing? Is it a bad thing? In Canada, you're not allowed to do it, at least at the amateur level. They call it a tandem buck. You can't push a guy. You can't pull a guy. And it was that way in the NFL till 2005. What do you think?
Well, it's funny because right around the time they made it a rule you could do it in the NFL. At the same time, they took out the pushing on the defensive side of the ball for field goal block. We used to line up two guys over top of a guy, two guys, and just push them as hard as you could into the tackle or the guard to try to block a field goal. And then no, that's not, once again, going against the D. Like, you can't do that. On the offensive side, no problem. Push away. It's a double-edged sword for me because part of me is like, well, if you don't like it, then stop them. If the defense stops them, they're not going to do it anymore. And the other part of me is like, well, first of all, it's a real dull way to watch a game. When a team like Philly's doing 7 tush pushes a game, every time it's 3rd and 1, 4th and 1, you know what's going to happen. It's just like, man, and as well, I wish that would have been a thing in 2014 because I'd have another Super Bowl ring, So
that's if they would have called the play. That's if Darren Bevel would have called the play if he didn't call a pass, right?
Yeah. So It's an interesting thing, so we'll see how it evolves. Because I mean, the game. You always think that you've seen everything, and the game continues to evolve. You see new things all the time, which is why I love sports and love football.
Speaking of evolving, flag football is going to be in the LA Olympics. Paul LaPolice, the head coach for the Canadian team. Joel Lipinski, the Regina guy, has just been named at Ignite in Saskatoon. He's been named the D coordinator. He's going to be on a future episode here. Awesome. It looks like the CFL and the CFLPA are going to be down with it, even though it falls between July 14th and July 30th of 2028. I think it's a good thing. What do you think? NFL, CFL players being allowed to go play?
I think it's interesting because when you watch I was actually watching the game. I watch the game a lot more now. I'm still not a huge fan of it, but I'm a huge fan of what it's doing for football overall, and especially on the female side. But it's a totally different game than the 12-on-12 or 11-on-11 game. It's a completely different game, and I don't know if it's 100% transfers. If you can just take 10 or 15 NFL guys and put them on the field and expect them to excel, I don't know right now if you just threw together a team if they could beat the national team right now. It's a question because the game is completely different. Is Mahomes better than the national quarterback for USA? Of course he is, but is he better on that field, knowing the playbook, knowing the in and out of the game? Because the game looks completely different than the NFL game or the CFL game. So it'll be interesting. I think it will be great for the game to have those guys there. But I think in doing so, I think they'll have to train for the Olympics on that playbook for a couple months leading up to it. And do I want my star quarterback training for the Olympics right before our season? I'm not too sure.
Yeah, and then injuries could factor in. Like a lot of players got hurt at that Four Nations in hockey, and it affected. Ekholm's one of those guys for the Oilers, and we'll get to that in a second. Okay, so Patrick Johnson is he's an owner of they've got a men's and a women's professional league starting up, and they start in August with a tournament in Vegas. And he's the former Baltimore Ravens receiver, played in the CFL briefly. I had him on the show here, and he's also the president. I was wondering, you know, the more your appetite grows, the way you're looking to get into business, would you look at maybe buying a flag football team?
I'll look at anything that comes across my desk. As I'm wearing right now, Portland Bangers FC, my new soccer team. We played our first game in the USL last week. We lost 3-0, but we have a soccer team now, and next year we're gonna have a women's soccer team. So now we're looking at like 5 or 6 teams, and that seems exhausting just to think about. But I think it's a bit of a risk because we don't know how it's gonna take off, and whenever you start something up like that, it costs a lot of money. But it'd be pretty cool to own I'm never gonna own an NFL team, so owning a flag football team might be pretty cool.
Well, what's his name just bought into the Cleveland Browns, Charles Woodson. Would you ever think about getting into a CFL ownership of some sort? And here's the thing: you're expanding here, and you're in baseball. I get it. It's not like the CFL is the second oldest league, but we need to look at expanding. How hard is it to frickin' expand? Like, couldn't we find? I've always said it. Maybe I think I did tell you this. I look at the northern states. Let's go with the northern states and maybe St. Louis, because that UFL's dead. It's going to be dead. Nobody's going to the games.
It's not looking good. Every stadium looks empty outside of St. Louis. I don't know how much longer they can keep that going.
This is where I say, have St. Louis and North Dakota in the Eastern Division, so you got 6 teams, and have Montana over in the Western Division, so you have 6 teams, and there you go. You got a 12-team league. I'm not saying it'll happen overnight, but I don't think it's happening in Canada.
Yeah, I think I'd love to see a 10th team either in Quebec City or the Maritimes, which should have already happened. Yeah, but I think one of the toughest things is just the footprint of a CFL field. A Canadian football field is 150 yards long. The blueprint of it with the end zones. And if you watch any college game or any NFL game, an NFL field's 120 yards long with the end zones. There's not 15 yards behind each end zone in any stadium I've ever seen. So I think there's going to be some challenges with that. I think there's some ways around it. I think, what if every field wasn't the same size?
Yeah. I don't know. Baseball has it. Baseball has that, right?
Baseball does it. Soccer, you can change the field during the season. Like they have different. I mean, that's thinking outside the box a little bit. It might be a little crazy to see a 100-yard field with 10-yard end zones or a 100-yard field with 15-yard end zones. But to build the game, I'm not 100% against it. I would have been like 10 years ago. But
as I said, back in the day in the 90s when they had to keep the CFL alive, and I'm not suggesting it's on death's door right now, but
no,
these next 5 years are critical. Back in the day, the Canadian teams were 500 against American teams, and they were using all American players and 1-1 in Grey Cups. And I think we both agree. Since then, like the Jon Ryans, those guys have gone through, and the players have even gotten better in Canada.
I would totally agree with that. Yeah, I think back in 94, 95, they did use all American players. And also back in 94, 95, as you said, they were trying to save the CFL. So they went to places like Shreveport, Sacramento, Memphis, Birmingham, I believe. All these cities that had absolutely no appetite for CFL football.
Right.
And when I go, Sarah and I were in Montana the other day, and they knew all about the riders. They knew about the guys from University of Montana that were going to get drafted in the CFL. And I think they did have 2 guys drafted in the CFL from that team. They knew all about it. So I think there's an opportunity there in maybe Washington, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, South Dakota, all the way up to St. Louis. Like stick with the northern. Yes. The northern places, and I think it could work. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but I think it has potential.
You have to look at it. Okay, before we let you go, you're wearing an Oilers hat. I know you're not an Oilers fan, but obviously it's pro-Canada. Do you think the Oilers are going to win the Cup? I think they are winning the Cup this year.
I think they got a shot. I thought they were going to do it last year, but yeah, right now I'm repping everything Canadian other than an address right now. Okay. But yeah, I don't like the Oilers, but I'm on the bandwagon now that my Maple Leafs are gone, and yeah, I'm cheering for everything Canadian right now.
They got to blow the Leafs up, don't they?
It's just the amount of disappointment year after year is crazy.
You know what's interesting though about Toronto though? I said this. I've said this before to other people. I've heard other guys who've played in Toronto talk about it. Now, listen, they're millionaire hockey players. I think it's just as hard to play in Edmonton. In fact, maybe harder because it's a small market. It's even smaller market, even more of a fishbowl. But so you're playing in Toronto is tough enough, but then all these teams come in and their players, a lot of them are Ontario kids, so they got friends and family, so they get up for every game. So the Leafs don't get like when Columbus comes to Edmonton, it's just human nature. Oh, fuck, who cares? We're in Edmonton. If we win, we win. When Columbus comes into Toronto, you got 5 guys from Ontario that have got their game going.
Yep. It's the exact same thing that we had in the NFL whenever we played in Texas. Every time we played in Texas, we had 10 or 12 guys in the team that were just absolutely – it was like the greatest honor of their life playing in Texas Stadium against the Cowboys and having their family in the crowd, and everyone got up for it. And I think you're seeing the same thing with the Leafs. These guys come in and, they're proud to play in front of their family, and they get as pro athletes, you think they should get up for every game, but, there is something there about it, playing in front of your family. So, yeah, I think we're definitely seeing that.
My favorite sport is football. It's the best team sport. You got 12 guys on the field or 11 guys on the field. You all got to do your job. If one screws up, the play's dead. And it's just one and done. You better be good that day or you're done, okay? There's no 7 games. But the NHL playoffs, there's something about the NHL playoffs.
It's crazy. I absolutely love it. I don't watch a lot of hockey myself. I'm a Leafs fan. Don't really pay a lot of attention to it until the playoffs. And then it's just like it might be the greatest tournament in the world. It's just every game is just like, heart and soul. And so many overtime games. I mean, you could play 28 hockey games in a span of 2 months that are highly, highly stressful, very intense hockey games. And plus with all the overtime. So you'd be playing equivalent to 30, 35 games. It's absolutely insane. I love it.
Well, and just to wrap this conversation up, we started talking about the grueling of the training camp. Think about when you're sitting on your couch having your beer and nachos or at the bar. Think about the guys that have been like triple overtime and then they're in the next game, and think about all the injuries they got.
Oh, it's crazy. You go through that season now, you're looking at over 100 games, with preseason. You could be, and then these guys go and play in these tournaments as well. I mean, you look at some of these guys playing like 110 games.
Yeah.
It's just the toll it must take on your bodies. I can't even quite imagine.
And lastly, did you ever, with all the toll, the guys coming off the field, they're all cut up and stuff. Listen, I know you're a tough guy and a high-performance athlete, but did you ever feel guilty as a punter when you only went out like 2 times or 3 times?
There was always – I loved training camp. Absolutely loved it. I looked forward to it all the time. It was great. You got to hang out with the boys all day, or, that cook's making you 3 meals a day. Yeah. And I would tell other specialists that I'm like, training camp's awesome, but don't you dare tell anyone else that. Dude, keep your mouth shut. All training camp, don't be heard, be seen, but just keep it under the radar, because these guys are going through a month of hell right now while we're over here having fun. So just keep that down.
pretend like you're icing something that you're hurt.
Yeah, pretend like you're having a miserable time, even though we're having so much fun over here.
It's kind of like when you're on the road as a parent, like a pro athlete parent, and you got the wife back home with the kids, and you're on the road. You do not tell her you had a peaceful sleep, or you tell her that it was loud down the hall, like I couldn't sleep. You don't tell her anything, right?
Yeah. Don't let on that you're having fun.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, Jon, thanks for this. I appreciate your time.
Anytime, buddy.
All right, here with the Commissioner Kyle McIntyre, who's back home for the first time in 2 weeks. We'll get to your yard, but your mother-in-law in some, having some health issues. My thoughts and prayers out to you. Hopefully everything's okay.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I know she's in great hands at Cardiac Lab in Regina General, and so hopefully Grandma will be on the mend and will be back home within a few weeks.
80 years old. Does she live by herself still?
She does live by herself. So she used to be a ranch wife. And then she and her husband retired probably, about 25 years ago and moved into town in East End. And so, and then she lost her husband probably 10 years ago in a farm accident. And so she's been on her own. So she's a great lady, great mother-in-law, great cook. And she's usually full of energy and fairly spry and loves a good card game. So this will set her back for a while for sure. But I think she's a tough lady, and she'll be on the mend, hopefully.
Well, she didn't cut your grass or look after your grass, apparently, when you were gone.
She did not. The Centennial Cup, as great as it is, it's about a 14-day event when everything's said and done. And so, unfortunately, no one was on the home front looking after the yard. And so once it stops being the monsoon season in Swift Current, the Commissioner's got lots of yard work he has to do.
So the Commish, proud of the Melfort Mustangs. I mean, they lost 7-2 to the Calgary Canucks, but what was that, like 4 games in 6 days or 5 games in 6 days? It's a marathon, right? Just like a CFL training camp, it's a marathon.
Well, the Melfort Mustangs really have been the class of the SJHL right from the beginning of the year. Last year, they finished second in the country. They got into the final against the Collingwood Blues. They lost 2-1 on a high tip. And certainly they were disappointed with that, although being in the national final, the top 2 teams out of 118 teams in 9 leagues is a tremendous accomplishment. So there was 13 guys that had a bit of a chip on their shoulder, and they went into this season, and they're a real juggernaut in our league. And, and they ran through our league. They're repeat Cantera Seeds Cup champions, the first in history to do that. They go to the Centennial Cup. They're in probably the toughest pool that there is at the Centennial Cup, and that included Calgary, who is the host team and the winner of the AJHL. And so they played them a couple Thursdays ago, and they lost that game 2-1, and had a couple posts, missed an open net, then had a couple bad penalties, and so really they were kind of swimming upstream after they lost that first game, because if you win the first game and you win your division, you get 2 days off before the semifinal. And so Melfort finished second. And I mean, it was a tough second. It was a really tough pool, and there's probably more parity this year at the Centennial Cup than I've seen in the last 4 years. And so they had a tough game against Sudbury, who is a good team, much improved, not Ontario Northern champion. Then they had a tough game against Trenton, the OGHL champion, who is a good team. And so it just kind of kept going from there. And then when Sunday came, they started out the game. They started well. They started playing the Melfort Mustang hockey that they normally play. But I noticed personally they didn't have as much jump on the forecheck and with the body checks. And then they got 4 penalties in a row, so they were shorthanded. And Calgary, they're a weapon, and they got a really good team. So hats off to them. So they pumped in a few goals, and Melfort just couldn't seem to respond. Especially first period, they kind of bounced back. Second period was 3 goals against, and so they were up against it, and I think at the end of the day, they're just out of gas.
The captain of the ship, though, the coach and GM, is honored nationally, which is great.
Yeah, so Trevor Blevins, the Mark Cross, Darcy Hagen Coaches Award winner, 3rd year in a row, the SJHL has been recognized for the top coach in the Canadian Junior Hockey League, and so hats off to Trevor Blevins. And I was telling someone the other day, whether it's Braden Klamosko or Mike Reagan or Trevor Blevins, those would all be people that I want my own child to play for. All of them are outstanding ambassadors for the SJHL, for their communities, for the franchises, and are awesome coaches. And so Trevor, to his credit, would say that it's the entire organization, the board members, the training staff, the athletic therapists, his assistant coach, the kids themselves are all the winners of the award. And so humble brag for him, but he does a good job and has a good program there.
Give me one thing you liked about the season SJHL-wise.
I really like the competitive balance, Michael. Lots of parity in the league. It's a 200-foot game. It's fast. It's physical. And you really notice that at the Centennial Cup. Saskatchewan hockey is unique. There are not many teams that play like Saskatchewan kids do.
Okay. And one thing you'd like to tweak. I don't want to have it negative, but one thing you want to tweak or improve on.
Well, I think we want to improve generally overall on our player experience and want to see more consistency throughout the league. And this year at our AGM coming up here on June the 5th, 6th, we're going to be onboarding and voting on the Warman Wolverines joining the SJHL. And as people would know, that's a franchise relocation from Notre Dame. And so we're hoping that they have all their ducks in a row and that the remaining 11 governors will welcome them with open arms.
And as we kind of touched on it before a couple times back, but just some closing thoughts on what was a great program in Notre Dame.
Well, 38 years, it's a historical program. There's lots of people who have coached or have played with the Junior A program specifically. So the rest of the school will continue to operate. They'll have the CSSHL, they'll have the female hockey, which they're increasing. They'll have the 18U AAA, but junior hockey has been sunset in Notre Dame at Wilcox. And again, a historical program. Probably the height of the program was 1989, with Brenda Moore and Curtis Joseph. And then, of course, you had people like Jaden Schwartz go through it and John Cooper go through the program. And so a lot of pedigree, a lot of people in the hockey world have gone through that program. And so it is bittersweet, but at the end of the day, it costs a lot of money to operate a junior A program. And that team was taking resources away from the rest of the school. And so Board of Governors at Wilcox made a tough decision, and it gives Mormon a great opportunity to join the SJHL.
Yorkton was a troubled spot. It's not now. They turned that thing around, at least in the short term here, which is good news. Are there any other things that you're looking, like how is it health-wise with your teams? It's always, I love the SJHL a lot for a lot of the same reasons I like the CFL. It's kind of a mom and pop league. It's very community oriented, and you always have 1 foot on ground and 1 foot hanging over the cliff, right? And with some of the franchises, it's kind of a quirky thing about them that I like. I know that sounds weird, but I always used to cheer for the Riders and then the team that was closest to folding. That's how I was in the CFL. So that's kind of how I am in the SJHL. I have ties to Estevan being the former guy. I like Weyburn because it's closest to me, and Cody Mapes is a friend. And then I'm like, okay, what team is struggling? So last year it's like, okay, well, hopefully Yorkton turns it around. But I guess it took a cab ride around the question. How is everything in the SJHL?
Well, you know what? From my perspective, everything is great. But probably, as you would know, Michael, just like the CFL, junior hockey is cyclical. Mm-hmm. And so if you have a competitive team, and that team is active in the community and they're doing lots of outreach, and you have a low churn on your roster and people identify with and recognize kids, and the kids are in schools with minor hockey, working with boys and girls, usually you are successful. And so typically successful on the ice relates to fan attendance, which relates to fiscal health. So it's all interrelated. And so, the teams that were probably near the bottom of the league, I think they got some work to do in terms of roster and fan engagement. The teams that go furthest in the playoffs, the playoff dollars, our attendance, where we averaged about $13.50 in playoffs. And so those teams that went long in the playoffs obviously are going to be a lot healthier than the teams that did not make the playoffs. So, no one's in jeopardy of losing their franchises or shutting down. We don't have any Yorkton situations. But right now, my greatest concern is our greatest strength. And so I'm concerned that Warman gets off to the right foot, gets on the right path. Mm-hmm. Satisfies some of the conditions that we've given them. And so I'm a little bit concerned about that right now. But from all reports and all thoughts, I think that Warman is going to be a great addition to the league, and everyone's going to be healthy, and everyone's going to be fighting for the Canterra Seeds Cup beginning September 19th.
Can you give me one condition that you absolutely must have from them to put your kind of concerns at rest, or say, hey, we're going the right way here?
Right. So we need to see their governance structure. We need to see their board structure. And the SJHL is unique amongst all the Canadian Junior Hockey League leagues, is that we're the only league that is truly community owned and operated. And so the relocation, initially, the Hounds were purchased by two individuals, John Abramitz and Cole Catcher. And so they have to present to the governors a plan that they're transitioning the ownership and the oversight and the operation of the community within a 5-year period. So that's probably the biggest condition, is they have to share this plan. The governors have to be satisfied with the plan, and then they got to actualize this plan within the next 5 years. So really that's the biggest thing, because unlike maybe Alberta and Manitoba that has some private ownership, and we've seen some things kind of come off the rails in Alberta with the private ownership. And so that's a really big thing that makes the SJHL unique. And as you would know, the communities and the teams have a symbiotic relationship, and we want to see that in Warman as well.
Yeah, no doubt about that, for sure. Hey, lastly, any we talked way at the start of the year, any more insight into this whole American college thing?
Well, I mean, it's still pretty early to say what the long-term impact is on it. If I pull out my crystal ball, I think it's not going to be as harmful for junior A hockey and the SJHL as people think it's going to be. A byproduct this year, we have probably almost doubled the youth sports scholarships that we normally have. And so again, you look at the U.S., a lot of these Division I rides are not guaranteed. A lot of people are decommitting after a year. And so really youth sport, Canada West scholarship is probably the most secure thing that you can do. It's Canadian dollars, and when the kids are graduating, as you would know, they're going to have a degree that they can actually use in Canada. And so I think it's an unintended byproduct, but I think it's a pretty good one. We've had a lot of youth sport coaches following around SJHL teams during our playoffs. There was a number that were out at the Centennial Cup. And so those kids are going to get a great opportunity, and they're going to play a high level of hockey, and kind of like the CFL. Like, I wish U Sport did a better job of promoting its players, its programs, and what incredible sports they have at the university level. Because as you know, your son was a U Sport athlete, my daughter was, and you know what? It's great to watch, but I wish the attendance and the promotion was better.
We'll see this year when the Rams host the Vanier Cup, the city of Regina, so that's going to be great. Hey, thanks for your time. Enjoy the summer. Good luck with your yard and your mother-in-law. I appreciate your time, Commish.
Thanks for your concern. Anytime, Michael.
And just before we wrap up, some other news to get to. The Rough Riders have brought back Canadian offensive lineman Noah Zare, the 26-year-old from Langenburg, Saskatchewan. He joined the team as a free agent last year, played 10 regular season games, made 4 starts at guard, but he was let go in the early rounds of training camp this year because they had stockpiled the offensive line with Philippe Gagnon from Montreal, veteran offensive lineman, and of course their big signing, Sean McEwen out of Calgary. But McEwen is on the shelf with a devastating lower body injury. We are told he's going to be out for quite some time. There's some speculate. Well, I'm not even going to speculate. I don't know what it is. Except it's a lower body injury. Gagnon left practice on Monday, holiday Monday, with the trainer, and he never returned. And I, of course, not at practice today and just scouring the various sites to see if there's an update. As I'm talking to you right now, there was no update, but we do know Noah Zare has been re-signed. Dalton Schoen back at Bombers practice, and Zach Collaro's happy to have his veteran star receiver back, which will bolster that offense. Elsewhere, the NFL, the Packers have officially renewed their assault on the tush push in advance of the ownership meeting today. The Packers submitted a revised proposal that turns the clock back to, say, like 2005, when both pulling and pushing a ball carrier was prohibited, which, by the way, I agree in this case to turning the clock back. The move addresses the root cause of the tush push, which, of course, has been made a bread and butter play by the Philadelphia Eagles, basically unstoppable. Once again, everything against the defense, like I said. And it's funny what winning will do. There was some talk that, is Nick Sirianni really the guy for the job? I don't know. Doesn't kind of get along with his coach, relinquish some play calling duties, and then all of a sudden his team goes in a run, has Saquon Barkley offseason signing, who turns out to be the offensive MVP of the league, and they win the Super Bowl in convincing fashion over the Chiefs. So winning covers up criticism, warts as it were, and Nick Sirianni gets a contract extension with the Philadelphia Eagles, and I guess rightfully so. There's lots of debate about the relationship between 24-year-old Jordan Hudson and 73-year-old Bill Belichick, the coach of the North Carolina Tar Heels. In a published report on today, actually, in the New York Times, journalist Catherine Rosman reported that Hudson has told at least one person that she and Mr. Belichick are engaged to be married. Each to their own, man. Each to their own. She's using him for money, and he's using her to feel young and, without going into it, he's using her, and she's getting something out of him. If it makes him happy, I guess so. Should make for an interesting spectacle. Chapel Hill area, right? NBA, Canadian Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and the OKC Thunder host Game 1 of the NBA West Final tonight versus Minnesota. Go SGA and the Thunder. Cheering for them now. Of course, the New York Knicks have advanced to the Eastern Conference Final. New Yorkers haven't been this excited since the transit strike stopped the trains coming into town from Jersey. And Giannis Antetokounmpo, I think that's how you say it, the Greek freak, may be traded from the Bucks. He'll give NBA teams a powerful presence on the inside and also in the game of Scrabble. And it's a graduation time for a lot of people moving on to the next phase of their life. So to prepare the graduates for the real world, I've put together some honest pieces of advice for university and college graduates here in 2025. Number one, the world doesn't owe you anything, but thanks to your high student loans, you owe it $175,000 before you start. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Be very afraid to make mistakes because companies don't need any more reason or reasons to replace you with AI. So be very afraid. If you're thinking of taking a year off to find yourself, let me, Ballsy, save you the time and effort. You will find yourself in your parents' basement. And the longer you wait, the more you're likely to be a permanent resident there, okay? When one door closes, another door opens. Unfortunately, both doors are to the kitchen at Applebee's. Good luck. I hear they're hiring right now. And for guaranteed riches, remember the 3 Ps. Positive, productive, and pregnant by Elon Musk. That's how you get ahead. And also, another piece of advice that I jotted down for graduates leaving university and college for the real world. Remember, when money gets tight, there's always OnlyFans. Not for guys like me, but for you young people. I joke. Don't do that. Don't do that. Anyway, good luck in the next step of your life. I'm sure you'll be successful. All right, that's going to do it for Ballsy Uncut, installment 123. In our next installment, we'll hear from the new defensive coordinator for the flag football team representing Canada. That would be Joel Lipinski from Ignite Athletics in Saskatoon, former Ram player, and now the strength and conditioning coach of the Huskies, one of the best in U Sports for sure. He's going to join us. We'll also be joined by Gene Principe, live Game 1 of the West Final between the Oilers and the Stars. I've got the Oilers in 6, and tonight, as we talk here, it's Florida against Carolina, and I got the Panthers in 6. So I think it's a rematch, Oilers in Florida. And the Oilers would get home ice advantage because Edmonton and Dallas had better records than the Eastern team. So that would be an advantage for the Oilers this year if they ever got pushed to a Game 7. I think the Oilers are going to win. Everybody says Dallas is a more rounded team, and I'll take Ottinger over Skinner and Pickard, although Skinner outplayed Ottinger last year, if you remember. And yes, I know some of the Stars players have yet to go off, but neither of McDavid and Draisaitl. Another key stat there, McDavid has 16 even strength points. Not really doing it on the power play. He leads the NHL playoffs in that category by 3 points. 3 points clear of anybody else. So it should be a good couple of series starting tonight. Florida, Carolina in Raleigh, and then in Dallas, the Stars against the Oilers. Toronto Maple Leafs, of course. I had the Leafs and Oilers in 6 games. Oilers would beat the Leafs in the Stanley Cup, so I was wrong there. I will tell you that, I've talked to Wendell Clark and other guys, Ronick and a lot of people who say, listen, you get paid a lot of money to play pro sports, so woe is me if they're crying, here's the smallest violin in the world playing for you, for the guys that are saying there's so much pressure in Toronto. But there really is, because you're in the fishbowl that is the market of Toronto. Huge market. It's like being the Rough Riders in Saskatchewan, only on 10 times the steroids. It trumps any other team, Raptors, Blue Jays, the soccer team, the Argos, of course. But, and here's the thing too, you've got all these kids from Ontario coming in to play the Leafs, so you don't even get a night off where other teams are going through the motions because they've got friends and family showing up to the games, so they're playing their nuts off. So it's always a tough game in Toronto. But they're going to have to blow that sucker up. And by blow it up, I mean, see ya Mitch Marner. He's going to go. And I think a change of scenery for him will work out. Maybe John Tavares is gone at the very least. I know he's a GTA guy. He comes back on a lesser deal. I don't think you get rid of Austin Matthews. Do you look at maybe trading Morgan Riley, the former Moose Jaw Warrior? Are you okay with what you got in net, Stolars and a wall? I think so. They got a good coach. They just got to find a way to get over the hump. But I find it laughable when at some points people were comparing Matthews and McDavid with Matthews and Marner with Draisaitl and McDavid. They're not even in the same league. Like, they're in the same league, but not even the same stratosphere. Like, which duo would you rather have? Anyway, it's going to do it for my time. I want to thank Kyle McIntyre for joining us, and also want to thank Jon Ryan with his Kickin' It with Jon Ryan segment. By the way, you want to get an Our Balls Are Bigger shirt? Our post-game show coming up, starting in the regular season Riders in Ottawa, June 5th. All money raised going to support the Love Life ALS Foundation, started by former Rider, Alouette, Grey Cup winner with the Stampeders, linebacker Glenn Love, who is battling ALS. We're trying to raise money for him. $25 goes straight to him. We're going to turn the money over here. Some of it, my first batch of shirts at the end of the month here. If you'd like to get a shirt, you can DM me at Ballsy Uncut on X, Facebook. You can reach out on YouTube. You can always text me, 306-526-7979, or Michael Ball on Facebook, Instagram, and X as well, at The Real Ballsy. That's going to do it for my time. Thanks to all the sponsors, and thanks to you for checking out another installment